What's up, guys? I'm Sci-Hi, and Neon Dynasty has now been out for about a week, and perhaps the biggest news is the emergence of this new archetype to Historic, this Greasefang Vehicles deck, and I would be remiss if I didn't talk about it or at least share a list in case anyone hasn't heard of this yet. But as you can see, I have not crafted all the cards for this deck or been exploring this yet myself, but I've no doubt been keeping tabs on it and kind of following the trends. Personally, I've just been exploring some other cards in Historic that Neon Dynasty has brought us. And stay tuned for future videos where I'll share some developments on some things I've noticed and some other viable cards. But this video, of course, we're going to take a look at the Greasefang vehicle deck, what makes it tick, why it's so powerful, and what a sample deck list looks like. So definitely subscribe and like the channel if you are here for competitive Historic deck lists, deck analysis, and all things like that. So without further ado, we'll get into it. But if you haven't heard of this by now, obviously the whole point of this deck and what makes it possible is the printing of Greasefang Okiba Boss, which is a 4/3 rat pilot that at the beginning of combat on your turn, you return a vehicle card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Gains haste, and then you return it to the owner's hand at the beginning of your next end step. So we can abuse that with really powerful vehicles, most notably Parhelion 2, as well as the big boat, the Sky Sovereign console flagship. So naturally, the common play patterns for this deck, what you're looking to do, cast Greasefang. Your combat step, you're going to get Parhelion back from the graveyard, assuming you've found a way to discard it, which this deck has many ways to do so. You're going to get to attack with a 5/5 flying first strike vigilance, big ass vehicle that's going to leave a couple angels back behind that is going to be difficult for your opponent to deal with. Now, you do still have to crew the vehicle, something to keep in mind. But full disclosure, like I said, I've not crafted these cards. I've been exploring this deck all that much. I've been keeping tabs on it and following things. But this is, I believe, a list Gabriel Nassif was playing earlier today, perhaps. So there's it's exact list. Check his list out if you're looking for the list. But anyways, we can talk about the rest of the card choices. Another thing that's powerful about this deck, beyond just the obvious slamming a vehicle into play sooner than you otherwise should and attacking with it, you've got 4 Goblin Engineers, which could act kind of as a tutor package. So Goblin Engineer enters the battlefield, you search your library for an artifact card, you put it in your graveyard, then you shuffle. And it also has an activated ability where you can sack an artifact to return an artifact card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So naturally, if you're not familiar with this, you can see where this is going. You can use Goblin Engineer to go find the vehicle of choice. Usually it's going to be the Parhelion. Put it into your graveyard directly. But there's a lot more that Goblin Engineer can do in this deck. You'll notice a lot of one-ofs and just useful utility artifacts in this deck that Goblin Engineer can go find and then ultimately get back into play with its other ability. So we can run through the rest of the list now and talk about some of these artifacts, but you've got 4 Portable Holes, which has just proven itself as just kind of a catch-all, at least smaller cards that may be problematic, maybe Graveyard Hate, other creatures. You know, there's nothing more satisfying than your opponent's got like a Voice of the Blessed, jacked up to 30/30, and just for 1 mana, you cleanly exile it and deal with it. It's a very strong card against auras and a lot of other cards that are very hot in the metagame right now. So 4 Portable Holes, again, they can be searched on demand with Goblin Engineer. We've got 1 Floating Thoughtseize in the deck just for more disruption. 4 Faithless Looting, obviously just another staple card in decks like this that are looking to put things in the graveyard. More card selection and finding what you need when you need it. 4 Faithless Lootings. Also have a Soul Guide Lantern against the Mirror Match, other graveyard strategies. Again, can be searched on demand with Goblin Engineer, as well as we got 1 copy of Wishclaw Talisman to search to further help find the combo. We've got a Can't Stay Away to return a creature with mana value of 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. And it gains, if this creature would die, exile it instead. So this, of course, is to resurrect Greasefang back. You can even have this happen as early as turn 2, so it's possible you can get an extremely early Parhelion into play by resurrecting Greasefang into play on the second turn. Also fulfilling a similar role as Faithless Looting, we've got 4 Thrilling Discoveries. Again, a common card in like Reanimator type decks like this. Of course, this is a little different than traditional Reanimator decks because we're strictly talking vehicles here, which is very unique. It doesn't feel like we've really had a competitive vehicle deck, certainly not in Historic, so this is definitely an interesting development, this deck for sure. We've got another one of in Ichor Wellspring, another card that you just see pop up from time to time in weird, janky artifact combo decks, but this thing's really good when it enters the battlefield or is put into a graveyard. From the battlefield, you draw a card, so naturally this is good material to use as ammunition to help power engineer and get further card drawing engines into play and just start drawing cards that way, creating value. Also have one copy of Reckoner Bankbuster, another vehicle fulfilling kind of this vehicle theme we've got going on here, but a strong card in its own right. Comes into play with 3 charge counters. You tap 2 colorless and it to remove a charge counter. You get to draw a card, so a little mini like charged draw engine in Reckoner Bankbuster, as well as when you remove all the counters, you get to make a pilot, which can be useful, but really just fulfilling more of a card draw role with a 4/4 body to boot, not too shabby. We've also got another staple in 4 Season Pyromancer, just a strong card all around for further card drawing and discarding, and ammunition to help get Parhelion and other vehicles into play. And we talked about the Parhelion. We didn't really talk about the big boat, but you also have a couple copies of it floating around, a 6/5 flyer. It can be another powerful vehicle to abuse, and when this big boat comes into play, of course, it deals 3 damage to a creature or planeswalker, as well as when it attacks. So it can be useful for just spot removal and otherwise just being a big, huge, aggressive, powerful vehicle. But that's the deck in a nutshell. It's got a lot of play. There's a lot of interesting play patterns. With all this kind of removal, it can be pretty disruptive at the same time as having just a powerful game plan to execute. So it can be difficult somewhat to play, a lot of decisions. You got a lot of different interactions and decision making, especially if you go deeper to the sideboard, which I'm not going to cover that. Just wanted to get a video out there and just further expose this deck in case anyone hasn't seen it on the ladder yet. You no doubt will soon if you continue to play as this continues to pick up popularity. Like I said, I personally haven't jumped on this vehicle bandwagon yet, but I'm definitely keeping an eye on this and following its developments closely. But let me know if you're playing this or if you've discovered any other different lists. This has been kind of floating around what people are converging on, something that looks a little bit like this. But we didn't touch on the lands, not a whole lot to say besides this interesting mech hanger, which I can move as I'm completely shrouding it. But mech hanger is another interesting new land that Neon Dynasty, of course, brought us in, that this can animate a vehicle and essentially turn it into an artifact creature. So this can be another backdoor way to activate your Parhelion and attack with it a lot easier, rather than having to cheat and use Greasefang, Okiba Boss, which of course is our primary thing we're looking to do. But you do have this cool new mech hanger land that you can use to activate it in kind of a backdoor way. But that's the deck in a nutshell. Let me know what you guys think of it. Have you faced it on the ladder? Anybody rocking this? If you are, definitely good luck with it and look forward to future innovations with it. Should be interesting to see where this deck goes, ultimately what tier it's in. I've seen people describing it as the best deck in Historic right now, which is really interesting. They very well could be right. Again, I confess I don't have a ton of experience with this yet. I have not faced it myself much, but it's certainly gaining popularity, so had to do a video about this and get exposure to it. But that's all for this video, guys. Again, I'm Sci-Hi. Like and subscribe for more content like this, and stay tuned for future videos. I'll definitely be putting out some of my own deck lists and share some of the things I've been personally experiencing with Neon Dynasty, some of the decks that I've been exploring. But again, we had to put out a video on this because it's just too big of a deck right now to ignore. So that's it for this video, guys. Appreciate you guys watching until the end. Again, I'm CyHi. Thanks for watching. And if you play ladder, good luck on the ladder, and peace, guys.